Ask any commercial diver what the worst water is, and I promise you they will not say the deep stuff. Deep is fine. Deep is math. You plan it, you respect it, you come home. The worst water is fresh water, inland and something man-made. Reservoirs, quarries, intake structures. And if you ask me specifically, I will tell you it is the still water, and I will tell you why in a minute. And it is not the reason you are expecting. I have been a commercial diver for 19 years. Inspection and light repair mostly, which means I go down and I look at concrete and steel that nobody has looked at since it was poured, and I write reports about it. It is not glamorous. It is cold and it is boring, and about 4% of it is genuinely dangerous, and I love it, and I am telling you my credentials because the rest of this is going to sound like something a person made up. The job was an intake tower in a municipal reservoir. If you have never seen one, it is a concrete cylinder that stands on the reservoir floor with the top sticking out above the surface, and the water goes into it through screened ports and down and out to the treatment plant. This one went in around 1961. It had been inspected in the 80s and then not again, which is more common than you would like to know. Visibility in that water was about 18 inches. That is normal. In a reservoir, you are not really looking, you are feeling, with a light held close so you can see your own gloves. Surface applied, not scuba, which matters. That means I breathe through an umbilical from the boat, and there is a tender on the other end of it. A man named Petrit, who I've worked with for 11 years, and who is the single least dramatic human being alive. Comms are hardwired. He hears me breathe for the whole dive. That is the job. That is what a tender is. First thing, about 12 minutes in, working the north face, Petrit says, "Say again?" I said I didn't say anything. He says, "Copy," and that is the whole exchange, and I go back to work. He did it 4 more times in the next 20 minutes. Say again, say again. Each time I had said nothing. The 5th time I stopped and I hung there in the dark, and I asked him straight what he was hearing. He was quiet for a second. He said it was not words. He said it was the sound a person makes when they are about to say something and then don't. That little intake. He said he kept hearing it right in his ear and it kept making him answer. Now. Comms glitch. Water in a connector. There are 11 boring explanations, and I believed all of them at once, and I kept working because that is what you do. Second thing, and this one is physics. Fresh water in a deep reservoir stratifies in layers, and the cold sits on the bottom. Always. It is the most reliable thing about a lake. You go down, it gets colder. Every diver on Earth knows this in their body before they ever learn the word for it. At about 50 feet, working my way down the tower, the water got warmer. Not by much. Enough that I noticed through a dry suit, which means it was not a little. I went down another 10 feet and it got colder again, hard, like stepping through a door. There was a layer of warm water sitting under the cold. That is backwards. Water does not do that on its own. Something has to be putting heat down there, and there was nothing down there to put heat anywhere. Third thing, I came around to the east face and my light found a ladder, rusted rungs set into the concrete going down. And I know what you're thinking. An intake tower would have a ladder. Of course it would, and yes, it does. It has one on the north face. I had already inspected it that morning. I had the drawings on the boat and the drawings in my head, and there is one ladder on that structure, and it is on the north face, and this was the east face. I put my glove on a rung. It was solid, it was cold, it was real steel, pitted the way 60-year-old steel gets, and it went down past the range of my light. Let me be accurate about what I did next, because I have thought about it a great deal. I did not investigate. I am not a person who investigates. I called it up to Petrit, told him there was an unrecorded ladder on the east face, told him I was noting it and moving on, and I moved on. He did not answer. I said his name twice. Nothing. Not dead air either. I could hear the boat, I could hear the compressor, I could hear him breathing, the way he could hear me. He just did not answer, and while I was hanging there, listening to a man breathe and not speak, I put my light down along the tower base one more time, because the base is where the silt is, and the silt is where you see things. The base of that tower sat in the doorway. That is the only way I know how to say it. The concrete went down into the floor of the reservoir, and there was a rectangular opening in the floor beside it, framed with an edge, and the water inside that opening was a different color under my light. Flat, black, no suspended particulate at all. Perfectly still. And here's the thing I need you to understand, the thing I have not been able to put down in 4 years. Water is never still. Not anywhere. Not at the bottom of anything. There is always drift, always silt turning, always your own bubbles making the whole column move. Still water is not a quiet thing. Still water is a wrong thing. My bubbles went up, and in that opening, about 6 feet in, something went the other way. It moved away from my light. Not fast. Not a fish. A fish flicks. It darts. It does the thing fish do. This went away from the light the way a person steps back from a window. Smooth, deliberate, and against every current in that water, including mine. I did not see a shape. I am being precise on purpose, because if I told you I saw a shape, you would picture a shape, and that would be your picture and not mine. I saw the water change where something was not letting the light through, and then I saw it stop being there. I went up. I did the ascent correctly, which is the only thing from that day I am actually proud of, because everything in me wanted to swim, and if I had swum, I would not be talking to you. Petra had me on the ladder before I was fully at the rail. He is not a man who touches people. He had 2 hands on my harness, and he was pulling. On the boat, with my helmet off, he told me. He had not heard me for 11 minutes. Not my voice, not my calls, nothing. He had been shouting into comms the entire time and getting no response. And he had already started the emergency procedure and had one hand on the standby diver's kit, but he could hear me breathing. The whole 11 minutes, slow and even and regular right in his ear, and he said the thing that ended it for me, he said, and it never got faster. I was working. I was moving. I was carrying tools and swimming a tower face and finding a ladder that should not exist, and I was talking the entire time. A working diver's breathing changes constantly. He listened to 11 minutes of somebody breathing calm and slow while I was down there doing all of that. We wrote it up as a comms failure. That is what is in the report. There is a report and it says comms failure and it says 1 unrecorded ladder, east face, noted for the record, and it says nothing else, because what else is there to put? I asked, later, quietly, about that reservoir. It was flooded in 1961, and there was something under it before it was flooded, because there always is. A valley, a road, a few farms, the usual. Nobody could tell me about a structure with a doorway. Nobody could tell me there wasn't one either. I still dive. It is what I do, and I am 51, and I am not going to learn something else now. But I do not take freshwater work anymore. Reservoirs, quarries, none of it. My partner thinks it is superstition, and I let her think that because the alternative is explaining, and I do not explain this to people who love me. So, back to where I started, since I promised you. Ask a diver what the worst water is, and they will say the deep water, and they will be wrong, and the reason they are wrong is that they are thinking about the dark. Dark is fine, dark is just no light, you bring a light. The worst water is the still water. Because water is not supposed to be still, and if it is, then something down there has stopped it, and it did that before you arrived, and it did it for a reason. And it is very patient about waiting to find out whether you are going to come in. The boathouse smelled of creosote and cold rope, and the particular green smell that wet wood acquires when it has been wet for 80 years and has made its peace with it. I can summon that smell at will. I expect I shall be able to summon it on the last day of my life. My name is Eleanor. I am 68 years old. I taught secondary English for 31 of those years, and I am aware that I speak like a woman who taught secondary English for 31 years. I make no apology for it. Precision is a kindness. If I tell you a thing happened, it happened in the manner I describe, and if I am uncertain, I shall say so. My family had a place on the lake from 1938, not a grand place. A cabin with a stove that never drew properly and a boathouse below it that was, to a child, considerably more interesting than the cabin. The boathouse had a slit for the rowing boat, a workbench along one wall, and above all of that a loft, reached by a ladder that my father had built himself and built badly, so that the 4th rung was a hand's width further than the others, and you learned it or you fell. We were not permitted in the loft. I should like to convey how ordinary that prohibition was. It was not delivered in a whisper. There was no dark family story attached to it. My mother said the floor was unsound, and my father said there were wasps, and both of those things may well have been true, and children accept perhaps 100 such rules in a summer without composing a mystery about any of them. But I will tell you 2 small things that I did not assemble until I was well past 60. The first is that my mother counted the oars. Every evening, without fail, before we went up to the cabin, she would come down and she would look at the rack and she would touch each pair. There were 3 pairs, and only then would she close the door. She did it the way one checks a stove. I thought nothing of it for 50 years. The second is that my brother Gilbert slept badly at the lake and nowhere else. He was 4 years my senior and an entirely unremarkable boy in every other respect. But at the lake he woke. I would hear him on the stairs at 2 and 3 in the morning all through our childhood, and in the morning he would be perfectly cheerful and would not mention it, and neither would our parents, and neither, being a child who took her cues from the room, would I. Gilbert kept the place after our parents died. I visited, but I did not love it as he did. My husband was unwell for a long time, and then he was gone, and there were years when I did not go north at all. Gilbert died in February, of a heart that had been giving notice for a decade, and he left the property to me, and in April I drove up to begin the miserable business of deciding what to do with 80 years of a family's things. I went to the boathouse on the second day. It was exactly as it had been. That is the cruelty of these places. The rope, the bench, the smell. The rowing boat in the slip, which Gilbert had kept in better repair than a man of 70, has any business keeping a wooden boat. And the ladder to the loft, with its badly spaced 4th rung. I am 68, and I was alone, and there was no one left alive to forbid me anything, and so I went up. I shall describe what I found in the order that I found it, because the order is the whole of it. The loft was clean. That was the first wrongness, if you like, though I did not read it as one at the time, merely swept, everything in its place, no dust of the kind that 80 years produces. Someone had been keeping it. There was a chair by the small window at the gable end, a plain kitchen chair of a set I recognized from the cabin. It faced the window. The window faces the water. The floor between the ladder and that chair was worn. I do not mean scuffed. I mean worn down into the boards, a shallow trough perhaps a foot wide. The way the stone step of an old church is worn by 600 years of feet, in a floor that saw, as far as I had ever been told, no feet at all. On the sill of that window there was a pair of binoculars, and beside them a wind-up alarm clock, and beside that a tin that had once held tobacco. And on the wall beside the window, from the height of my shoulder down to the height of my knee, there were tally marks, thousands of them, cut into the wood, not written, grouped in 5s in the ordinary way, in bands, in columns, going down the wall and along it, some of them gray with age and some of them pale and fresh. There were so many that in places the wood had been cut through to the batten behind. Consider for a moment the labor of that. Somebody had sat in that chair, at that window, and had cut a mark into that wall, and had done it enough times to wear a trough and a floor. The tin held pencils, a whetstone, and a folded paper. The paper was a list, in 3 hands. The first hand I did not know. It was a copperplate of the sort taught before the war, and the entries begin in 1938, which is the year my grandfather built the place. And each entry is a date, and beside it, a time. Nothing else. 11,040, 11,040, 11,040, 11,040. The second hand was my father's. I would know it anywhere. I have a shelf of his notebooks. His entries begin in 1961 and run to 1989, and they are the same. A date, a time, always within a minute or two of the same time. The third hand was Gilbert's. His entries begin in 1990, which is the year our father died, and they run without a gap that I could find to the 22nd of January of this year, which is 11 days before he died in a hospital 140 miles from that lake. He was 70 years old, and he was driving up to that boathouse in the deep of winter, alone, to sit in a chair by a window and make a mark on a wall. And at the bottom of the last page, beneath the final date, my brother had written the only sentence on the entire document. It says, "Eleanor should be told." I sat down on the floor of that loft. I am not a woman who sits on floors, and I stayed there a considerable time. Here's what I have been able to establish since, and it is not much, and I have been thorough, because thoroughness is what I have instead of courage. The lake was raised in 1911 by a dam at the southern end for a mill that failed within a decade. The raising drowned about 400 acres. And among what it drowned was a burial ground belonging to a settlement that predates any record I have been able to obtain. The county has a single line about it, and the line is a note that the relocation of the interments was not completed. I have found no explanation for the marks. I have found no explanation for the time. I have found one further thing, and I debated whether to include it, and I have decided that I shall, because I said at the outset that I would be precise. I have sat in the chair, not to keep the watch. I am not so foolish, and in any case, I do not know what the watch is for. There is no instruction anywhere in that loft, and I have come to think that is deliberate. That each of them worked it out alone, and none of them wrote it down, and that this is why my brother's last note says only that I should be told, and not what I should be told. But I sat in it, in the daylight, in April, and I looked where the chair looks. It looks at open water. There is no far shore in that direction. The lake bends, and what you see from that window is simply the middle of it, the deepest part. Where the old channel was before they raised it, and I understood, sitting there, while my mother counted the oars. She was not making certain that nothing had been taken. She was making certain that nothing had been returned. I have not sold the place. I find I cannot. I have had the boathouse door fitted with a better lock, which I am aware is an absurd response, and I have not been back up the ladder. The clock on that sill is still wound. I did not wind it. The light came on across the water 11,040, the same as it had every night since September, and that was the night I finally did the stupid thing and got in the boat. I should back up about 4 months, because the stupid thing only makes sense if you know how normal it started. So I'm Toby, I'm 24, and I had what was genuinely the easiest job in the world, off-season caretaker at a summer camp. 11 weeks, October to the end of December, living in the staff cabin, and the entire job description is, don't let the pipes freeze, walk the property twice a day, and call the owner if a tree comes down on something. That's it. That's the job. They pay you not very much, and you get a whole lake to yourself, and I took it because I'd just finished a degree I had no plans for, and the idea of being unreachable for 11 weeks sounded like the best thing that had ever been offered to me. And honestly, for about 2 weeks it was. It's beautiful up there. Cold, but the good kind. Okay, so, the light. The camp sits on the west shore. Across the water, maybe 3/4 of a mile, there's the east shore. And the east shore is nothing. It is state land. There is no road to it. There's no cabin on it. There's no dock. There is nothing over there but trees coming down to rock. And that matters, because it's the whole thing. I checked it on maps. I checked it on the satellite view. I asked the owner. Nothing. And every night at 11:40, a light comes on over there. Not a big light, like a lantern or a window with one lamp behind it. Steady, warm-colored, sits maybe a couple of feet above the waterline, and at 12:10 it goes off. 30 minutes. Every night. Now, the first week I saw it, I thought, cool, there's a cabin over there that isn't on the map, some guy's got a place, whatever. Second week I thought, that guy has a really consistent bedtime. By the third week, I was standing on the dock at 11,038 with a cup of tea waiting for it like it was television. Because here's the thing that got me. It was never late. I don't mean roughly on time. I timed it for 19 consecutive nights with my phone, and it came on between 11,039 and 11,041 every single night, and it went off 30 minutes later to within about a minute. Nobody lights a lamp that precisely. I don't do anything that precisely. I mentioned it to the owner when he came up to drop off propane in November. Just casual, like, hey, who's got the place across the water? And he did this thing that I've thought about a lot since. He didn't say anything for about 3 seconds. He was loading a tank onto the dolly and he just stopped, and then he started again and he said, "There's nothing across the water," in a completely normal voice, and then he changed the subject to the propane. And when he was leaving, he said, without looking at me, "You don't need to be down at the dock at night." That's it. That's all he said. Didn't explain, didn't tell me to leave, nothing. So obviously I went and read every logbook in the office. The camp keeps caretaker logs going back decades in a filing cabinet because it's the kind of place that has never thrown anything away. Mostly it's weather and repairs. Pipe froze, fix the pump. Deer got into the kitchen garden. But if you go through enough of them, there's this other thing running underneath, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. 1974, light again. 11,040. 1981, a woman's handwriting, lamp on the East Shore, 2040 to W0110. Have stopped recording nightly, it does not vary. 1996, told the new kid not to look at it. 2003, and this is the one that changed the whole thing for me. This is 4 words in the middle of a page about a broken generator. Do not answer it. I read that at 2 in the afternoon in a warm office with a coffee, and I still felt it go down my back. Because, answer it? With what? What does that even mean? It's a light. You don't answer a light. Except, obviously, you do. Obviously, there's exactly one way to answer a light. And for the record, I didn't do it that night. I sat with it for 11 days. 11 days, which I think is pretty good, honestly, for a 24-year-old alone in the woods who has just found a warning written by a stranger 20 years ago. But on the 12th night, I took a torch down to the dock, and at 11,040 the light came on, and I lifted the torch and I flashed it 3 times across the water. Nothing happened. I stood there feeling like an absolute idiot for about a minute and a half, and I was actually turning to go back up the hill, and then behind me the light went off, and came back on, off, on, 3 times. I have never in my life run up a hill like that. Now here's where it stops being fun. I need you to track this next part carefully because it's just numbers, and the numbers are the scary part. The next night, the light came on at 11,036, 4 minutes early. First time in 19 recorded nights, and I'd been keeping my own log by then, obsessively, like the others had. 11,036. Night after, 11,029, then 11,021, then 11,008, then 10,002. Every night, earlier, not by a set amount, it was accelerating. The gap got bigger each time, and it never once slipped back. And it always burned for exactly 30 minutes, and then it went out. By the first week of December, it was coming on at 9:30. And I sat down with my log and I did the arithmetic, because I'm not a genius, but I can draw a line through points. And the line said that in about 9 days, that light was going to come on in the middle of the afternoon, and about a week after that, it was going to be on all the time. I don't know why that terrified me the way it did. It's a light getting earlier. On paper, that's nothing, but it felt like watching something walk toward you very slowly across a very big room and doing the maths on when it arrives. That's when I decided to go over. Which brings us back to the start. Let me be straight about my reasoning, such as it was. It wasn't bravery. It was that I had 11 more days on the contract, and I could not stand the idea of 11 more nights of watching that number come down, and some part of me thought if I just went and looked and it was a guy with a lantern, I could sleep again. I took the aluminium skiff. It was the 6th of December, flat calm, no wind, cold enough that the shallows had a skin of ice on them that broke like sugar when I pushed off. It took about 25 minutes to row across. The light was on the whole time, dead ahead, and it did not get bigger. I'll say that again because I noticed it about halfway, and it made my arms stop for a second. I was rowing directly at it for 25 minutes, and it never got any bigger. I hit the east shore about 40 feet north of where the light was. There's no beach, it's rock, angled, wet, with the trees right down on top of it. I got the boat up as far as I could, and I got out with the torch, and I walked south along the rocks toward where the light was, and where the light was, there was nothing there. No cabin, no lantern, no fire ring, no bulb, no boat, no path, nothing. Just a flat shelf of rock about the size of a kitchen table, and moss, and beyond it trees so tight together you couldn't walk into them without a saw. The light was not on the shore. Standing on that rock, I could not see it at all, and it smelled like wet ash, not smoke. Smoke is a live smell. This was the smell of a fire that has been out for a very long time and then rained on, and it was strong, and there was nothing there to make it. I stood on that rock for maybe 10 seconds, and then I turned around to go back to the boat, and the light was on across the water, on my shore, in the camp. About where the dock is. I don't remember getting in the skiff. I remember rowing, and I remember that the light on my shore went out when I was about halfway back, at 12 minutes past 10 by my watch, which was 30 minutes after it started, because of course it was. I tied up. I walked up the hill in the dark. The staff cabin was exactly as I'd left it, door still locked, my dinner things still in the sink. I'm not going to say what I found on the dock. I've written it down twice and taken it out twice. It's not that it's some huge horrifying thing. It's that it's small, and it's mine, and it's the only part of this I don't want in somebody else's head. I drove out the next morning, 8 days early. I called the owner from the road and told him the truth, which is that I'd gone across, and he was quiet again in that same way. And then he said, "Did you answer it?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay." And that was the whole conversation. He paid me for the full 11 weeks. I didn't ask him to. The camp still runs. They still hire someone every October. I looked it up this year because I couldn't help myself, and the ad is still there, same wording. And I sat and looked at it for a long time and thought about writing to whoever takes it, but I don't know what I'd tell them that would help. Don't answer it didn't help me. I read that in a logbook in daylight, and I did it anyway 11 days later, and I think everybody who's ever kept that log did the same thing. And I think that's why the note is 4 words long and doesn't explain anything, because the person writing it already knew you were going to do it. So I don't write. But every night around 20 to 12, wherever I am, I notice, and I have never once been surprised by the time.